Hello, it's nice to be with you again for Chinese folk tales. I'm Wang Lu. On the plains of western Sichuan province, there's a river that has 24 sandbars. Today we'll tell you how those shoals were formed. Many years ago, Mother Nie and her son Xiao Nie lived in a village near the river. They cultivated a patch of land, but they seldom had enough to eat. The boy, who was only 14 years old, was industrious, brave, obedient, and always ready to help others. He was very well liked by the villagers. That year, western Sichuan was hit by a severe drought. Crops withered and turned yellow, and trees died. Yet people said the disaster wasn't nearly as severe as another disaster, the local tyrant named Zhou, who had intensified his exploitation of the poor. One morning, Xiao Nie left home before the cock crowed to cut fresh grass for Zhou's horses. He searched the fields and hills, but he couldn't find grass anywhere. When the sun was high in the sky, he came upon a place he'd never seen before. Suddenly, something white flashed by, a rabbit. Thinking it might lead him to grass, Xiao Nie ran after it for a long way. Finally, the rabbit disappeared behind a huge rock. On the other side of the rock was a patch of land covered with thick, tender green grass. Xiao Nie was delighted and cut a whole basketful. Curious, he examined the land and found there was a small pool of water in the middle. In the water, he saw the glow of a lustrous pearl. The boy carefully picked up the pearl and returned home. Back home, Xiao Nie removed the pearl to show his mother. Instantly, the room was filled with the light so bright they could hardly open their eyes. Mother Nie put the pearl into a large rice jar that was almost empty. The next morning, the jar was filled to the brim with rice, and they knew it was a magic pearl. From that day on, they had plenty of food and clothing, and they also used the pearl to help their neighbors. Soon, the whole village knew about it. When the tyrant Zhou heard about the pearl, he wanted it. Accompanied by his henchmen, he went to the Nies and claimed they'd stolen the pearl from his family. "You think because you're rich, you can bully the poor?" asked Xiao Nie angrily. "What proof do you have that I stole the pearl?" Zhou took no notice of Xiao Nie and ordered his bullies to search the house and the boy. Hastily, Xiao Nie popped the pearl into his mouth and swallowed it. Frantic, Zhou ordered his bullies to beat the boy, who finally fainted. Just then, many neighbors ran in and chased Zhou and his men away. Xiao Nie didn't awaken until midnight. Opening his eyes, he demanded water to drink. "I need more," he kept crying. He knelt by the water jar and emptied it with great gulps. Still, he felt his body burning. Mother Nie was alarmed, but unable to help him. Finally, Xiao Nie rushed out of the house to the river, his mother close behind. The sky was filled with thunder and lightning. A wild wind brought torrents of rain, and the river began rising. Xiao Nie threw himself down on the bank and began drinking large gulps from the river. Mother Nie clutched his leg and cried, "My son, no more!" In a few minutes, she saw her son had changed. A pair of horns had sprouted from his head, blue whiskers had formed around his mouth, and red scales had glistened on his head. He had turned into a red dragon. Just then, Zhou and his lackeys came to the riverbank in search of Xiao Nie. They intended to cut open his belly to get the pearl. The boy felt as if his heart were on fire with a desire for revenge. He rolled into the river, and a flash of scarlet lightning split open the black sky. It was followed by a crash of thunder. Gigantic waves surged up and carried Zhou and his henchmen into the depths of the river. Slowly, the wind died down, and the waves calmed. Xiao Nie raised his head from the water and said, "Mother, I must leave now. The ocean will separate us, and I'm afraid I'll only return when stones blossom." Mother Nie knew her son wouldn't return. Heartbroken, she stood on a large rock, calling, "My son! My son!" Xiao Nie raised his head to look back at her. At that very spot, a sandy shoal appeared. 24 times she called to him, and 24 times he looked out of the water at his beloved mother. At each spot, a new sandbar appeared. In later years, people called them Mother-Gazing Shoals. Well, that's the beautiful but sad story about Mother-Gazing Shoals. I'm Wang Lu. Bye for now.